Haven't got a great deal of time today, but I'm going to have a quick faff around with the black QT50. The plan for what I want to get done today is have a quick look at the wiring, see what's going on there, take the front wheel off so I can put a tyre on it, because currently it's just a rim, and possibly have a look at the situation with the transmission box in the back there, see what's actually missing, and if I get time, maybe see what's in that one as well, so I can possibly swap them over. I'm not entirely sure. I was thinking of possibly doing a first start on this, but at the moment I'm still waiting for a petcock to arrive, and also the tank I've cleaned out, I'm still fairly sure I've got one that matches the bike somewhere in a box, so I haven't painted it or anything, so that'll be going on blue, which is the colour it's in at the moment, unless I find the black one somewhere. I've got to clear out my garage anyway, because I've got a car lift coming, excitingly enough, so hopefully I'll find it then. But for the time being, we'll probably run the blue one for a bit, but not yet, because I'm still waiting for a petcock. This is the third petcock I've ordered, because the first two had the wrong thread on them. For anyone wondering, it's M14 by 1mm thread you need on a QT50 petcock. Which is apparently the same as a Honda CG, which is what I've gone with this time. The previous two said they were for the QT50, but didn't say what thread they were, and they came with 16mm nuts, which are obviously no good. Anyway, I'm waffling instead of wrenching, so let's go. So the plan for this thing is to run with absolute minimal wiring, no lights, just a horn, because I need one for the MOT. Although actually, having said that, it's MOT exempt, but I'll still put a horn on it, because that's the legal requirement. I've heard, well, originally these had quite a complicated wiring system for a moped. They've got a battery, they've got regulators, rectifiers, that kind of thing. I've heard you can run them as AC, so I wouldn't need a rectifier. I'm not sure if I'd need a regulator with no electronics like lights on there. So as far as I'm aware, the main reason for the regulator is to stop the voltage going too high for the lights and possibly other electronics in there. It is CDI, so yeah, obviously it wouldn't be ideal running too high a voltage through the CDI box, but beyond that, I'm not entirely sure. There is the, I think that's the regulator, but it's got lots of this sort of thing going on, so it's been hardwired somehow. CDI box, that's good, I'm glad that's attached. The coil isn't looking too happy though, is it? What's behind here then? Is that the oil pump? I think that's the oil pump. Sort of hard to tell. But that's another thing, it's going to be running premix fuel, which means not only does it not need an oil pump, but these things have on the, oh god, the stem nut's loose, the handlebars are just spinning freely. So on the throttle, the cable comes down, and then on a normal QT50, it'd go through the frame, through this hole, which I'm going to do. On a normal QT50, it'd then hit like a splitter box thing. So you'd have a control cable going to the throttle, and another one going to the the oil pump. So it regulates the amount of oil that goes in and increases it the more you rev the engine, basically. None of that will be required, so that's another thing, make it a bit more lightweight. Not that these things are going to save a huge amount of weight, but it's a start, isn't it? So basically all we're going to need up here is a horn switch and a kill switch. I am running a kill switch, I'm not just going to kill it by covering the carb or whatever. So this spaghetti of wiring won't be required, we'll just need two wires going up to the front there for the two switches, and they'll both be grounded out on the handlebars. I'll probably keep the regulator just so it doesn't blow up the CDI unit. Rectifier, I don't know if it'll blow up the CDI unit without a rectifier. Basically, the way that works is, well, on eBay you can buy half-bridge rectifiers for £7. So that's probably what I might end up doing, I'm not sure yet. The difference between a full bridge and a half bridge is that AC power is delivered in a wave. It's positive, negative, positive, negative. And they basically, the two wires flip. So DC full bridge rectified basically just becomes you have a positive wire and a negative wire. DC half bridge rectified, you only get one half of the wave, so you might just get the top and then a gap and then the top and then a gap of the wave going to each one. So what that means is that your lights might flicker. If you're not running lights like me, it's not really that important. The only difference in manufacture really is that a half bridge rectifier has one diode in it, whereas a full bridge has 4 diodes in it. So really not a thing particularly for me. So yeah, I might run a half bridge rectifier on it. So anyway, without further ado, let's get into here and see what's going on. Just noticed as well, is that a flasher cam? I think that's the flasher cam. That might be handy for a different bike, because like I said, we're not running flashers on here. Anyway, so this cover was held on by 3 screws, although one was missing and the other 2 were loose, which is a bad sign. Like I said, as far as I was aware, it was missing the planetary gear inside here, but it looks, I don't know what I was expecting to find, but it looks complete to me. It's very free running though. It doesn't seem like it's turning. I would guess that it's probably not turning the shaft round. Obviously these are shaft drives, so you've got a bevel gear, planetary bevel gear thing in here that turns the shaft in there, that should turn the clutch. Now what's in the clutch cover is the next question. Let me see if I can do it one-handed. Should probably be less lazy and find somewhere to put the camera really, but in fact this isn't the clutch, this is the magneto on this side, I'm sure of it, but we'll take it off anyway while we're undoing things. I have to be careful not to lose that little spacer there as well, which should actually be quite easy because I don't need to undo that screw because the case is broken. Right, oh, this one's broken too, lovely. Right, I don't really know what I was expecting to find in here, but that's what it looks like inside. You can't really see, can you? Okay, best thing to do is work out how to take this apart, which I'm not doing today, but at least we know that there is something in there. Like I say, it's very free running for turning a shaft around as well. I can't hear anything. I still don't think that there's anything in there particularly, but I need to work out how to remove it. I suspect if I was to undo that bolt there, this would come out that way and I'd be able to see, but I don't want to take both wheels off at the same time, so for now we'll come back to it. So here's a bit of Yamaha weirdness for you. This 17mm castellated nut was on here. I quite want to get that mudguard bracket thing off as well. On this side anyway, we've got a non-castellated 14mm nut, and obviously it's turning that. The reason for the different size nuts has become apparent. It wasn't a nut, it was actually a bolt that goes all the way through. I hadn't inspected this side particularly well, so I just need to try and pull this out now, and that's the axle, so I'll get on with that. The wheel is off, and I thought while I was in here I'd inspect the brake pads. They're looking a little bit chalky there. They might clean up though, I'm not entirely sure. Wheel bearings. I do have new wheel bearings for this, I think. Possibly only the front ones, but I don't know if the back one will need some sort of shaft bearing, wouldn't it? And in this side, can't really see much, but basically there's a spacer, and that's it, really. Yeah, so I think I'm out of time for today, but in a nanosecond for you, and probably a week for me, I'm going to put a new tyre and tube on this, so I'll see you then. Here we have a QT50 wheel complete with new tyre. This is the front wheel I took off earlier. I had to use loads of tyre lube on it because I got it seated on the bead, except in one bit where it was kind of like curled in a bit, so the tread was a bit more this way. It would have made for a wonky tyre. I put a load of tyre lube on it and then pumped it up to like a ridiculous amount, and it eventually popped on, and then I let the extra air out. So anyway, sorry about the background wind, by the way, I hope you can hear me. This wheel is a little bit more work than I thought it was going to be. I knew I'd have to change the tyre. I thought I might have to do the wheel bearings, which I do because they're seized on both sides, which is fine, I'd already bought some. There's also the brake lining. The whole bike has been powder coated black by the previous owner. as you can see, like these spoke nipples are well, spoke ends, sorry, are powder coated in and things like that. So it wasn't a, it didn't, I don't blame him, but it wasn't fully dismantled before he did it. And another thing that didn't get done was masking off the brake lining. So the brake lining has been powder coated, which means I've got to go over it with some emery cloth off camera and clear that up so it'll work. There's also in here the brake plate, sorry. When I took that off, we've got one brake pad. I thought the brake pads would be alright. The other one there, the brake lining fell off it, or the brake pad friction material stuff, can't think of the word at the moment, came off it. So unfortunately I had to replace those as well. I have bought some more brake pads from that. Annoyingly, it was just after I'd done a Treatland order, otherwise I'd have got the purple power ones off Treatland, but it wasn't worth putting another order in, because by the time you shipped it to the UK it gets quite expensive. So just dismantling that so I can show you. Inside here you can just about see in certain lights, and if it was to focus, for example, would be quite useful. I don't know if you can see it, but on the left hand side there is the speedo drive, which is seized. Now I won't be using a QT50 speedo, so I probably won't use the speedo at all, to be fair, so it's not that important. But I'm wondering if there'd be some sort of spacer issue with that. This spacer here seems to be built in, so hopefully not, but I'm assuming there's some sort of speedo drive supposed to be in there. So I don't want it to be loose on the axle laterally, if you see what I mean. So I'll have to investigate that. So I think today's job is probably do the bearings, and if I get a chance, because I've only got half an hour, I've been permitted half an hour to do this, I'll see if I can refurbish this as much as I can as well, put the new brake pads on it and stuff, and then we should be more or less ready to put it back on once I've cleaned the inside of there. So let's go. Inside here then, you've got, well, basically it's like a sandwich, so there's a bearing either side, and in between there's like a tube, which is a spacer that just keeps the bearings evenly spaced. And what happens is, if you use a blind bearing puller, it's got these kind of like jaws that have to open up and grip the back edge of the bearing to pull it out with a slide hammer, and the little tube inside generally makes it really difficult to get it to grip in there, because obviously there's no gap for it to go in. If there was nothing behind the bearing, you could just get the whole thing behind it, expand it out and then pull. But because there's a tube there, you've got to get it lined up right on the join, and then it can't go in far enough to grip properly, really. Having looked in here, you can't see it, but I can see the little spacer tube inside has moved to the side a little bit, so it's loose enough to move to the side a little bit, which means I can get a punch through that hole and knock the bottom bearing out through the hole, because again, if the tube was there, there'd be nothing to grip onto, but because the tube's gripped across a bit, moved across a bit, I can knock this inner race on the other side through. So I think, yeah, you can possibly see a little bit better in there that it's shifted across. So the order of the day, rather than put it in a vise and fuck about with the slide hammer, I think is to take this little rubber seal out, try not to damage it, because I have no idea where I'd get another one from, and then knock the bearings out the bottom, and then I can take the tube out and use a socket to knock the whole bearing out nice and straight the other side. So I'll get some gear and come back. Get a little pick under there and lever it out gently. Yeah, saved it. Excellent. Right, I'm going to use this as a drift to get the bottom bearing out. I've stood it on the flat side, which is the brake plate side, on two bits of wood with a gap in between. Let's see. I think we're going to get it there. Because it'll move, we should be able to get both sides like that. Do it from the other angle. Also, it doesn't matter if we knacker up the bearing, because it's scrap anyway. It's moved a little bit. Not a retaining ring in there or anything, is there? No. Felt some movement then. One bearing and spacer. Don't actually know which way around this bearing went. I'm assuming it went in that way, but who knows. And yeah, this bearing it moves that far and gets stuck. Rather than bother to get a socket, I'll just knock it out by the centre race, because it's not exactly going to be usable, is it? There we go. Both bearings out. Let's clean up in there a little bit with some wire wool, and then we'll put the new bearings in. Jarring jump cut. Here's my trusty wheel repair kit that's got everything on it in it. It's quite handy, this, actually. Everything: dust caps, rim protectors, a million levers. You'll be seeing more of this when I do the back wheel. But one thing that I also keep in here is wheel bearings. Now normally for Tomoses and stuff like that, it's generally the 6201 2RS that I use. These are actually 2Z, which means metal shielded rather than rubber shielded or plastic shielded. The ones that came out weren't shielded at all, which is what allowed all the moisture and crap to get in. Can't really see that, can you? Yeah, that's what allowed all the moisture and crap to get in the first place. So these 6201s are slightly larger. Don't know if you can see that. It's probably, if we line them up at the bottom, there's probably 3mm in that. So they're no good, but I did buy, and the reason I'm showing you that it doesn't fit the other ones is because I can't actually remember what size these were. I'll look it up and put a little bit of text on the screen. But I researched these in hospital, bought them and wrote QT50 rear wheel on them, and they're the same size as the front wheel one. So these are what we'll be using. Get rid of that. Inside here, don't know how well you can see it, but there's like a little step there, which means which means basically you can only put the bearing in that far and then it hits the step. So I'll put that bearing in first. There is a little bit of contouring sort of thing going on in there in the other side. I don't know if that, I think it seats up against that step as well, but I'm not sure. So I'm going to do that side first, then put the spacer in, and then it can't go any further than the spacer, can it? But before that, just got to clean all the rust and crap out of it with a bit of wire wool. So you probably don't want to see that, so I'll come back to you. So that is about as good as it's going to get in there. There's still a little bit of rust in the very centre bit, but nothing's going to be touching that anyway, so that's all right. With bearings, if they're scrap, it doesn't matter if you knock them out by the centre race, but when you're putting them in, nice fresh bearings, you want to be putting pressure on the outer race so that it doesn't knacker up your bearings. So the general rule is find a socket like this spark plug socket that fits on the outer edge, but obviously it also needs to be able to fit in the hole. Another way of doing it, which I'm going to do, is put it in nice and straight and then use the old bearing to knock it in, which is alright if it's only going in a little way like this, but if you're going in further than that, you'll end up with the old bearing stuck in there as well, which is a nightmare. The reason I'm using the bearing instead of the socket is because at the moment I haven't got a soft face hammer on me, so rather than knacker up my socket with this hammer with cobwebs all over it, I'll just knacker up the old bearing instead, since it doesn't matter. We also don't need the gap in between these two bits of wood now either. So I want to be in as straight as possible, and then that on top of it. Let's get it started. The straighter you can tap it in, can't even talk, the straighter you can tap it in, the better. That's going in nicely, look. I'm only doing one tap at a time as well, so I can check around it, make sure it's still nice and level. Because if it goes in an angle, you'll either distort your bearing or mar up the surface of the bearing, you know, the tube where the bearing's going. I think we're about there. Give it one more go. One more. It has gone down ever so slightly, that last tap, so I'll give it one more. Yeah, I think that is... yeah, that's seated nicely against there. Now we need to remember this bit. I'll clean this up a bit as well. Again, it's not going to be, it's only the inside really that's going to be contacting anything. I think that ring there, it doesn't matter which way up it goes, it's just to stop it from moving all the way to the edge, so you can't get it when you put the axle in. I'm going to spend a minute cleaning this up, so I will come back to you. Right, I think that's a little bit nicer now. That's still not amazing, but I've done the best I can. So, drop that in. Oh, okay, right. So it does actually centre itself quite nicely in there, which is good. So, the other new bearing can go in nice and straight again. The dead bearing on top of it, exactly in line. That isn't actually that straight, it's down a bit on that corner. Let's see if I can adjust it slightly. Wants to be as flat as you can get it. Right, here goes nothing. Ah, that's gone in a nice old way. So we're about there, I think. Ah, lovely. Excellente. So that's done. I better check what time it is, and if we've got a chance, I'll do the brakes as well. I think we can at least squeeze some brakes activity in, so let's do that. Right, so brake pads can come off for a start. They have seen better days, haven't they? Quick wipe over with some brake cleaner and a rag. I did think about spraying this black, but I think I'm going to leave it. My philosophy with this bike, I've decided, is does it need it? If not, take it off. So I suppose that probably goes for embellishments as well. I'm going to paint the exhaust, I think, because that's looking a bit ratty and tired. But most things I'll just leave the same colour. So like it's all black except the handlebars are silver, they're staying silver. One strange thing about this as well is that they were on that way around, no, that way around, sorry, but they're on with the spring facing outwards, which normally, unless I'm wrong because it's a while since I've done brakes, normally the spring would be facing that way so you can take it off and put it on, but on these it was facing that way. Whether it's supposed to be or not, I don't know, but we're going to reassemble it like that and hope. Now then, is this painted, in which case I'm ruining the paint finish? I thought it was just aluminium, but perhaps it's painted, in which case I'm making a mess of it and I might have to spray it black anyway. We'll see. Not going to do a great job on it. just make it look a little bit more presentable. Because it's going to be tax and MOT exempt, I imagine, having never ridden a tax and MOT exempt vehicle yet on the road, I imagine the police are going to be a bit more wary of people driving unroadworthy vehicles, and particularly with that one looking like absolute shit, they're going to want to pull me over and check it out, so it needs to be mechanically decent. I'm going to leave all the, can't see it, but inside there's a load of like grease shite, but it's kind of solidified and it's not going anywhere, and I think it should keep the water out, so I'm leaving it in there. Brake pads. Right, these were on eBay for £10 a piece, so I just grabbed them. Basically, the Square Motorcycle Parts, it says on it, .co.uk, but whether or not that's who made them or just who distributed them, I don't know. I just went for it. But fairly straightforward. They are, I think, the same size as the old ones. Yeah. So this should be a direct replacement, which is good because they're supposed to be. There we are. I'll tell you what I haven't done. I haven't got any copper grease. Back in a second. Copper grease. So yeah, I would have gone with the Purple Power ones, but yeah, I did a Treatland order last week, annoyingly, to the tune of nearly £400 for a secret project I can't tell you about yet. Basically, I'm building my dream bike, and it's only available in America, and that's all the clues I'm giving you. But yeah, so that was a lot of money, and then I think the customs charge on it was another 80 quid or something like that. So yeah, I didn't want to put in another Treatland order and then get customs charges on it again when I'd just done one, which is a shame, because actually I think Purple Power would have been quite decent on this, although it's not exactly going to be full of, you know, I don't think it'll have any trouble stopping. It's not far off stock, and the gearing means that it's just going to have more torque rather than more speed. So, oh, it's just starting to rain. That's not good. I've been putting off doing this all day because it was tipping it down earlier. I thought we'd got past it, but apparently not. Right, that's those cleaned up. Copper grease on the bits that rub. And then, that's the wrong way around. That one there. Start with that end, I think. Are you going to stay? Ran out of storage on my phone then for a second, but we didn't miss anything. So basically, those bits are greased up. I've got to clean the pads with brake cleaner, just to make sure there's no copper grease on those, because that will not help my stopping power. I think that's about it with this, to be honest. So I'll probably try and plug this hole up for the speedo drive. It's just starting to rain as well, so this is quite good timing. Oh, I'll tell you what I didn't do. I forgot to put this special seal back in. So that should just push in, I think. Yeah, there we go. Brilliant. So that's the wheel done. All I need to do is clean up the axle, clean up this spacer that fits in that special seal, clean up this nut, put it back on the bike. Oh, and also sand this brake lining down a bit to get rid of the magical powder coat. So I'm going to go inside now because it's raining, and we'll come back to that next time. So, apologies for the strange lighting. It's now night time because night time is the right time. So I've sorted out the brake lining. Don't know how well you can see that. I got some of this hashtag not spawn Wilco all-purpose paint and varnish stripper. It's like a cheap version of Nitromorse. And I put it on my finger. I ran it around the inside of there. I originally bought that for taking the powder coat off the wheels on my Peugeot Vogue, so I knew it worked on powder coat. Left it on there for a couple of hours, ran a Stanley knife blade around the inside of it a few times and scraped it off, and that is the result. We have a bit of metal there. There is still a tiny bit of powder coat left in the grooves. I couldn't get it out with wire wool either, so that's staying. So basically I just need to get the dust out of it now with some brake cleaner and put the front wheel back on the bike, and that'll be that. So thanks for watching. Sorry it got a bit long this time. I've been trying to keep the videos to 10 to 15 minutes and so far I've been failing miserably. Yeah, I'll see you in 2 weeks. Cheers.